everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. Just going to wait a few minutes to let everyone arrive, and then we'll get started. Thank you.
Okay, hi, good evening, everyone. My name's Andy Egan. I'm one of the directors of Fellowship of the Trees, and just extending a very warm welcome to everyone who's joining us this evening. We've actually had more than 100 people sign up for this, so there could be more joining as I start to speak. And yeah, Fellowship of the Trees set up the Community Tree Nursery Collaborative back in November 2021, and that followed now 2.5 years ago in July 2021 our first How to Set Up a Community Tree Nursery webinar. And as the number of community tree nurseries has tripled since then, we kind of thought it might be quite a nice idea to do another one. And clearly there's lots of interest from people around the UK in setting up a community tree nursery, and you're all very welcome at whatever stage of the journey you may be on, including if it's only just a dream or an inkling of an idea, and you're here to find out more. And we have a fantastic selection of speakers who will be able to share their own journeys in setting up a community tree nursery and what they've learned and found out along the way. And my last, the most important job is to introduce our new coordinator for the Community Tree Nursery Collaborative, and that's Hayley Rogers, who joined us at the end of November. And we're delighted to have Hayley on board, and she's going to be with us at least until March 2025. We've got some more funding thanks to the Trees Outside Woods programme, who are kindly supporting our core activity as well. So we also have some members of our core group. We have a core group of community tree nurseries who, in partnership with Fellowship of the Trees, set up the Community Tree Nursery Collaborative. So we have some really good people here who'll be able to help answer your questions, who've been in the community tree nursery business, if that's the right term, for more than 20 years. So we've got a whole range of experience. So I hope you really enjoy the seminar and find it really useful. And I'll hand over to Hayley now to take it from here.
Thank you, Andy. So I'm just going to share my screen. So we'll start with some slides. So yeah, welcome to our first webinar of 2024 for the CTNC. So you've joined the webinar of how to set up a community tree nursery. We'll be taking a sort of whistle-stop tour overview of how to set up a tree nursery. So I'm imagining some of you might already be involved but want to kind of learn more, or you might not be involved at the moment and just thinking about it. So this should give you everything you need to know and be thinking about as an overview. And then we'll give you lots more details of how to deep dive into some of the topics that we're covering tonight as well. So just a quick look at what we'll be covering this evening. So just Andy's already covered a little bit about the CTNC and Fellowship of the Trees, but I'll just give you a bit more of an overview of the resources that we offer and ways that you'll be able to get involved and learn more and collaborate more with other CTNs to really get the best out of this collaborative. Then we're going to hear from our guest speakers. So we've got 2 case studies for you to inspire you on how possible it is to create a fantastic project. And then I'll be running through an overview of the key information you need to get started on your CTN journey. And then we'll have a Q&A session where you'll be able to ask any of your burning questions, or share resources as well. If there's any resources or links to website that you think would be useful to the group, please feel free to share those as well. And then I will be sending out an information pack tomorrow with links to, I'll be putting links in the chat as well as we go through, but also sending out a pack tomorrow to you all by email, so you can read through some more detail in your own time, and also a quick survey as well, and we'd really appreciate if you could complete that for us as well. And so we'll move on to just a bit of quick housekeeping before we move on to our speakers. So if you could just keep your microphones on mute throughout, that would be appreciated, just to avoid disruption. And what we'll do for the Q&A is, rather than taking questions after each section, if you could just use the chat function as you think of a question, just type it into the chat as we go along, and then I'll pick those questions out at the end, and we can work through as many as we can in the 40 minutes that we have. Well, I think we've got 45 participants at the moment, so if we do 1 minute and everyone has a question, we might get through them, but if not, I will type up answers to them and add them to the email that we circulate after this webinar as well. So don't worry, we will answer all of your questions. And then also just to be aware, this session is being recorded to be published on our YouTube channel, and also is being live streamed on Facebook. So if you don't want to have your camera on knowing that, then obviously feel free to turn it off. And now we shall move on. So a little bit about the CTNC. So there are lots of ways for you to join our network. If you're just joining this evening and you've never sort of worked with us before, there's a whole list of different ways that we can support you with learning about setting up a community tree nursery or finding one that's already set up near you. So we run online open space sessions every other month on Eventbrite. The next one is the 20th of February. We also run regular webinars like this one, so this is our first, and we alternate those every month as well. So there's something going on every month for you. And you can follow our Eventbrite page to learn more about upcoming events, and we'll put the link in the chat while the speakers are talking. We also have a Facebook members group as well as just a normal Facebook page, and that's a collaborative space where people wanting to learn more or wanting to help share resources, you can go on there and post questions and pictures and sort of update on what you're doing, and it's a collaborative space for us all to learn from each other. It's a really friendly space, and we would invite you to join that, and we'll put a link to that as well in the chat later. We're also developing a map of all the CTNs across the UK, so we're hoping to publish that so that you can see the nearest one to you if you want to get involved in one that's already established, or you might see that actually there's a gap in your area and you might want to start one. So look out for that coming soon as well on our website. We also have a YouTube channel, so we've been running since, well, end of 21, beginning of 22. So there's quite a few videos on there already, quite a lot of resources. So have a look at that, we'll put a link in, and also any webinars that we run this year will also be on that channel. So you can go back and check notes and things if you want to. So yeah, we try to facilitate a friendly space to collaborate, basically. So you guys can come together either on Facebook or on open space sessions, as well as doing these free webinars to educate and share resources. And yeah, we want to sort of help as many people to set up these really valuable tree nurseries as possible. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the webinar. So I will hand over to our guest speakers. Perhaps Rod, would you like to go first, as you're at the top of the page? So Rod is joining us from a charity in Cornwall seeking to end homelessness. And I'll just give a brief intro, but I'll then hand over to you, Rod, to to introduce yourself in full and tell us what you've been up to. But both of our speakers are very strong on the sort of the social enterprise and supporting local community and coming together. And Rod particularly on the social prescribing side. So he's just going to talk us through what they've created and the context around that and what their story has been so far. So over to you, Rod. Oh, you're on mute, Rod.
Okay, good evening. I don't have a presentation as such. I thought the technology might get in the way. So just to say that I'm a trustee of a charity called EMAS Cornwall. There are quite a few EMAS communities in the UK, and we are trying to set up a community in Cornwall for previously homeless people. We offer them a home for life and also meaningful work. Most of it, and most usually, what people will know is from charity shops. So we're doing that, but actually where we are at and in the situation where we are, a charity shop is not actually going to be viable for us because of the competition that's already there and doing very, very good work. So we needed to look at other social enterprises to earn money, and we managed to lease 28 acres of agricultural land in Truan, which is just outside St Austell. It's in the clay pits area, and we've got the 28 acres, as I say, and we put aside 3 acres for us to do something, and we didn't know what it was. The rest of the land is being farmed under contract for us. And when I started looking around, and I used to go up onto the site and see all the deer roaming around, totally unashamed and very tame, I thought that actually we needed to get a deer fence down there pretty quickly. So it transpired that probably the tree nursery would be the best bet for us. So we did a business plan, which took quite some time. We did quite a bit of research on identifying the market and setting ourselves some targets. So the first target that we set ourselves was actually to make some money. So we have a property that we might be able to get, we don't know yet, but that requires £3.5 million. For us to go looking for £3.5 million worth of funding, we have to show that we're capable of dealing with that and that we have some level of business acumen. So we set up this tree nursery to start that process. In December of 2022, it was a greenfield site. In June of that year, we had put up the tree nursery, the deer fencing, thanks to a loan, a grant from Forest for Cornwall. And that's where it lay, because actually we did international advertising for a tree nursery manager, and actually we weren't able to appoint. We had so few applicants. So everything was mothballed for quite a while. And then in December, we had a phone call. Do you want some trees? And the tone of voice behind that suggested to me that there was an opportunity. In the end, we ended up getting 43,000 trees delivered that would have been burnt if we hadn't have taken them, because there was nowhere else that they could go. So those trees were planted on our site by contractors, not by us, fortunately. And that was the start of our journey. We had applied to the Tree Production Capital Grant Scheme for funding to help with infrastructure. So in the first round, in the first year of that, we put in 2 containers, and we also bought a polytunnel, which only went up this August, by the way, so that we've got somewhere to store stuff when we were doing anything. Then we started looking at ways of getting an infrastructure together, and I'm sorry, I'll have to rewind a bit. In the August to November of 22, we actually started collecting our own seeds, and I'm afraid all of those seeds ended up in my back garden, and it's only a little back garden, but we managed to, using the Cops in the Box scheme, we managed to get quite a few trees into root trainers, and they are growing very well, thank you. So one of the things that happened when we were thinking about the tree nursery was, how was that going to fit into our ethos as a charity, as a charity that looks to help those who are most in need? I was introduced to the notion of social prescribing, which, to be honest, I'd never heard of before. But actually, that has proved to be a real cornerstone of what we're about, because the tagline for our nursery is nurturing people, plants and planet, and the people come first. The trees are a vehicle for us to actually do decent work with decent people. So we've developed along that theme, and we continue to do so. We are working with the DWP, with the Job Centre. We are working with the social prescribing coordinator for our area, and every area has one. I've prepared a little print off for you later on that will come in the pack. But there's actually a section called Green Social Prescribing, and that is a fundamental strand of the social prescribing offering, if you like. And the NHS is trying to move from a national illness service to a national health service, or national wellness service. We all know that anxiety, depression, social isolation are now endemic in our society and in lots of societies throughout the world. There is nothing better than getting a group of people together doing repetitive jobs, and weeding is a repetitive job, and they enjoy it and they achieve something. Even if they've only weeded half of a row, they can actually see what they've done. The other thing about it is that I used to employ people, and people used to come in and they used to earn money for spending their time with me. Now and again, I'd get somebody who was really keen, and they would switch on discretionary effort and then watch them fly. They did all sorts of different things, amazing things, and discretionary effort, I realised, is really, really important. So if you get any volunteer along, and all of their effort is discretionary, they are choosing to be with you, they are choosing to spend their time with you, and to work with you. And I think that's quite a humbling thing, really. I personally enjoy working with volunteers much better than I did with employees, because I'm asking them to do something. I'm not telling them, I'm asking them. And the other fundamental thing about volunteers is that they've all got their point of view, and they enjoy telling it you. The other thing is that obviously social time in work is, time is money. But actually, when people are having a chat or having a cup of coffee or a tea, and that's very frequent, that's still important time. So whatever work they're doing, the social element of it is just as important. We did appoint a nursery manager who unfortunately through ill health had to leave us, and that put us back because we'd actually started getting quite a few volunteers coming up and doing various things, from collecting seeds, from weeding, from planting out, and so on. So we, as I said, we've also got the DWP who are happy to have people who are signing on with them for whatever reason to be coming up and volunteering with us, and they get their transport paid for, and they get PPE, and we, if they are homeless, we provide them with a meal. So and that's a movable feast in itself. So we've got 2 rounds of TPCG funding. The first one allowed us to get mains water on site because it was a greenfield site. It allowed us to get the polytunnel, and sorry, it allowed us to get the containers and the polytunnel, the mains water connected, and we've now gone for the next one because our aim is to be growing and selling in excess of 200,000 trees a year. We need to make money, and so we are getting the level of mechanisation that we require. We don't want people having to dig trenches in the rain to plant trees. We want to be able to plant 5,000 trees in a day with ease, and so we're getting the tractor and the planters, etc., to deal with that. So we are looking to be growing in excess of 200,000 trees. Some of those are going to be field grown and some of them are going to be cell grown. So we have, Marketplace is a brilliant place. We have an old caravan that I found that cost me £500 that we use for making the tea and everything else. It's surviving. It's dry at the moment. All of the machinery that we've got has come from Marketplace as well, and I've also got 7 further polytunnels ready to put up, commercial polytunnels that I bought second hand, and we'll be putting those up with netting over them because obviously the polythene will be too hot. So the aims for the future, well, we collaborate very greatly with Forest for Cornwall. All of the trees that they initially brought in December belong to them. They also found another 43,000 from Woodland Trust that we've looked after as well. So on top of that, we've got about 15,000 of the trees that I collected in our first year. So going forward, we intend to collect far more seeds because 305 is not collected. So it's part of our USP that we collect Cornish seed to grow Cornish trees. Somebody who knows something about it says that our site, which, as I said, is up in the clay country, if any trees can grow there, they can grow anywhere in Cornwall. So we intend to carry on doing that, and we're collaborating with Forest for Cornwall mainly, but with other people as well. Actually, some people that I met on here that we're collaborating with as well. So we intend to grow. I intend now to get a water management system in place, which is looking after bringing the water on, because the mains water is totally ineffective. The pressure is ridiculous. So we're now going to be pumping water in from the lake below us, and we're looking at a whole circulatory system whereby we're going from getting the water in, pumping it around the irrigation, and then drainage, because the drainage issue when you're washing seeds is quite an issue, I think. So if anybody's got the ideas about that, that would be brilliant. So yeah, our aim for the future, we are just about to start advertising for a nursery leader, and we're also going to be advertising for a support worker. So the funding for the support worker, the chances are that we will get funding for a support worker to work with our socially prescribed people. That extends the opportunities we have. It allows the nursery leader to spend more time on all of the bureaucracy, the biodiversity, the biosecurity, the FRM system. We are registered for collecting forestry material, and we have to keep that up to date. We have just been accredited for UK ISG, and we're in line to get our plant health accreditation very soon. And all of those things do take time. So if I've got any advice for you, the first one is that whatever you're going to do, expect it to cost double and take as much time as possible. So, sorry, it's going to take twice as much time as you thought. And that's where we're at, and we're just moving forward. One caveat with volunteers is that if they're socially prescribed, there will be some issues, and you won't necessarily know what those issues are. So you need to work very closely with the social prescribing team and tell them what you want and what you can cope with. Because that's really important. Because yeah, we've had some interesting times with the people that we've had. But when I ask them if there's one thing that's happened as a result of them working with us, it is that we've given them a sense of purpose, and that's crucial. Thanks very much. I'll take any questions later.
Thank you so much, Rod. Yeah, really, really inspiring work, and yeah, incredible how much you've been able to do and yeah, continue to do. So thanks so much for sharing. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions at the end. I know I've got a few. Okay, I will pass on to Stephen and Anisha. Please take it away. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us. Share my screen quickly. Sorry. Try that again. Sorry, technical issues. There we go. Yeah, evening, everybody. My name is Stephen Hill. I work on the Plymouth and South Devon Community Forest, and I'm the urban lead. So a little bit of a history of our tree nursery and where we're up to now. It's on a considerably smaller scale than Rod's. In 2022, we worked with an established tree nursery quite local to us to help us set up a business case and tell us what we needed and what stock we should be looking to collect and grow and sell, and yeah, how to get established on our journey. That was in 2022. Similar to Rod's experience, again, things always take a lot longer than you expect they do. Summer 2023 is when we started building our tables. Actually, sorry, I'm just going to go back a second because I'm getting ahead of myself. So a little bit about the Plymouth and South Devon Community Forest quickly. So it's a DEFRA funded scheme, and we're a afforestation project, partnership project between Plymouth City Council, Woodland Trust, National Trust, Southampton, West Devon, Dartmoor National Park, one of 15 across the UK. We've got ambitious targets to plant 500 hectares by April next year. That's right the way across South Devon. And particularly within the urban sector, there's a much larger emphasis on engagement and skill development. So it only made sense for us to bring that full circle. Myself and our project team are all based in Plymouth, and with that larger emphasis on community engagement and where we're situated within the city, at a place called Pool Farm, which is a city farm with a host all kinds of activities. There's various forest schools and school groups and volunteer days, corporate events, etc., that all happen at Pool Farm. And with us working from there and with the project that we're delivering to plant trees, it only made sense for us to bring that full circle and set up a community tree nursery. So what were some of the reasons why we did that to begin with? So stock availability. As I said, we've got ambitious targets, which we're currently on track for, and each year it's getting more and more difficult to source stock. So having that source, the pipeline of projects that we're looking to deliver, we know how many trees we need, what that species composition is. Having that stock on site would be of a massive benefit. It's more environmentally friendly. So again, as a purchaser of tree stock, if anybody has done that before, you quite often you have to shop around, and different suppliers have got different species and different numbers and different growing formats. So when you're purchasing stock in, you have to shop around and get things shipped over from all over the UK. So yeah, more environmentally friendly, reducing the carbon footprint. Collecting and growing local provenance seed source. So yeah, again, similar to what Rob was saying, if we're planting within a certain area and we know where that's going to be within South Devon, it makes sense to source the stock from that local area, and perhaps there's elements of local adaptations for oaks that are grown in southern England versus the ones that are grown in the north of England. Biosecurity issues and reasoning, again, bringing stock in from all over the UK. We haven't had a situation where it's happened up till now, but it's lends itself to that, with pests and diseases being transported in from stock from different nurseries and then spreading that across the country. And engagement and upskilling. So as I said, big emphasis on engagement and getting people involved in green infrastructure, tree planting, and all of that good stuff. So we wanted to get as many people involved as possible, and teach them things. So where we're up to so far, summer 2023 is when we started building after the business case was done. We decided the majority of our stock was going to be grown on scaffolding planks and scaffolding poles, raised up on tables off the ground with a cage around it, so it's hopefully vole and deer proof. We set up one polytunnel on site, and that's for volunteers on rainy days, so they've got somewhere to socialise and do seed stratification and pricking out and potting up, etc. And outdoor stratification troughs. So the majority of the stock that we're growing, we're using the fridge stratification method, but things that are less vulnerable to voles and mice, etc., like any nuts. So anything that's wind blown, field maple, silver birch, we are putting them in outside troughs and letting them stratify naturally, and then plucking them out from there the following spring. Here's a picture of the stratification troughs, which we've so we started seed collecting in autumn last year. So fingers crossed for a good germination rate this year, but it's to be confirmed. Stratification troughs that we've got there, as you can see, all labelled, with the species: field maple, silver birch, alder, etc. The positioning of our tree nursery on site, the Pool Farm has been going for several years, and we had a large field up at the back of the site. It was probably about a 20-minute walk through muddy woodland and quite steep tracks, and it was a field that was dedicated to an orchard, but a corner of that was initially put forward to be used as a community tree nursery. in beds to grow them as bare root stock. But some of the issues that we face there, just in terms of access and getting volunteers up there on a daily basis and water accessibility, etc., we decided to bring the bulk of the tree nursery back down onto the farmyard, and placed it next to our barn. And then, yeah, reasons for that is easily accessible. It's on your doorstep for weeding and making volunteers cups of coffee, etc. But also being situated next to a building. And we're also lucky enough to have a natural spring that pops up just from the bank behind where the barn is that we can access free water from there. So we have set up some IBCs, and we're funneling water from the barn into those, and also rudimentary dug out a small 200-litre pond that we've dug in and built a dam with some clay, and it works great so far. So we're able to just dip water and cans into that, and it's refilling even in the height of summer. Our funding and collaborators. So we're in a little bit of a unique and privileged position with our community tree nursery. So at Pool Farm, there are several teams that are working out at Pool Farm, including the Plymouth and South Devon Community Forest and the Pool Farm team. Green Minds, which was another partnership project between Devon Wildlife Trust and PCC, has funded the majority of the capital work, so everything that's paid for the scaffolding and the cages, etc. To date, we've spent about £12,000 in setting that up out, from capital costs, and collaborators to date getting that set up, building the tables, seed collection, etc., is volunteers, work experience students, and then various staff, corporate volunteering. We found that was a big benefit if you have a site and you've got activities and approach businesses with them. A lot of them have X amount of hours per year that the staff can dedicate to volunteering, which we found has been really helpful in not only what we're doing at Pool Farm and at the tree nursery, but also with the tree planting right across the working boundary. And then also they're more likely to, if you've got wants of your tree nursery, we've also been donated tools such as spades from those businesses, and the IBCs. So I'm going to pass over to Anisha now to talk about the volunteering aspect.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So my name's Anisha. I coordinate the volunteer program for the Community Tree Nursery at Pool Farm. So we have been running the volunteer program since September of last year. And we wanted to have a strong core volunteer base as opposed to short-term volunteering that you would normally get on tree planting schemes. You just have the one off day. So having a core team was kind of key. So we run weekly flexible drop-in style volunteering sessions, but we do have a core group of volunteers who have around 10 core volunteers, usually ranging up to 15 people each week. And yeah, so once a week volunteering for about 5 hours, and then we have 2 members of staff as well to facilitate that volunteering and care for the trees throughout the rest of the week when it's not a volunteer day. So our volunteering program is inclusive of all people from different walks of life. So we want to, the community aspect of it is quite important to us. So prioritizing local residents from the area. So trying to build resilience within the community and bring people together. So, and then also building skill in that sense as well. So we welcome anyone with no horticulture or carpentry experience to come and gain those skills, build their confidence. And we also do a bit of social prescribing as well, which we found to be quite successful. So we've partnered with Live Well Southwest, mental health charity, and they also bring a couple of service users each week, and they bring different ones. So that's been really beneficial. And then if you go to the next slide, please. Yes, so some of the activities that we do with volunteers, we do seed collection, obviously. We do a lot of bare root bed maintenance at the moment, and tree lifting will be sort of what's coming up soon. And sort of not everything is necessarily tree nursery based. We want to use it as a sort of tool to help people build skills. So we also have been offering training and different site visits to other tree nurseries that we're partnered with. So we found that that's been really great as well. And move to the next slide, please. Cool. So it's not all been smooth sailing. As Rod and Stephen have said, things take time. So setting up, I think one of the biggest challenges was to do with how to deal with FRM. We had a lot of people coming to us with donations, and as we want the nursery to be financially sustainable, trying to work out how the biosecurity and that sort of aspect has been a bit tricky. And we kind of, it's just been challenging. We're still trying to figure that out, what we can and can't do if we want to sell these trees on. But we are registered with Forestry Commission for FRM, and we're working on all the other certifications that you need in order to sell trees. Yes, some of the best advice, I think, is getting ahead of the curve for a lot of things. I think we're still in our first year, and it's kind of hard to predict what you are going to need if you've never done it before. But by talking, so through things like this webinar, talking to other people who are further ahead helps you sort of predict those challenges further down the line. So yeah, with particularly we found with our seed collection last year, trees don't always play by the book. So going out and actually seeing your site and where you're going to collect trees from and what's actually ripe and ready to harvest is really useful. And just planning how you're going to logistically collect all that is really useful. And not putting all your eggs in one basket as well. So we have quite a few different methods of growing trees. So that sort of takes away a bit of the risk in case one method fails. And it also offers different learning opportunities for staff and for volunteers as well, which is quite a nice thing. And yeah, I think that's everything that I need to cover. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen and Anisha. Just so heartwarming to see both projects really embedding sort of mental health and community support, and it's not just about growing trees, it's the benefits that it brings to the community, whether that's social prescribing or just the volunteering based, allowing people to come together and meet like-minded people in their community, as well as learning new skills. Potentially allowing education as well with schools and things as well. So absolutely fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing your stories with us. I'm just going to share my screen again. And just talk through, just sort of pull out the main points. I mean, both sort of sets of speakers have really kind of brought to life the sort of the challenges and the sort of the diversity in how you can run a community tree nursery. And I just want to pull out the main threads so that you have an overview really of what you should be thinking about if you're thinking about setting up such a thing. And it's so diverse in terms of even the why, like why start a community tree nursery. It might be about just wanting to create a place where the community can connect, and obviously the social prescribing elements that have been described, or working with sort of Live Well and NHS around health and wellbeing benefits. We know there's multiple research that's been done on the benefit of connecting to nature, and actually having your hands in the soil and sort of working with plants sort of increases serotonin levels and is very good for mental health, but it's also exercise and fresh air and great for physical health as well. It might be that you want to create a place for peaceful activism. If you've got people with climate anxiety and like wanting to feel like they can do something to make a difference, this is a really nice way to be able to connect people with that. And whether it's seed collection or being a regular volunteer, or just planting trees out on a public event once a year, it creates a really nice opportunity for people to come together. And also local provenance, as it's been said, does help with resilience. So plants that are the seeds that are collected and then planted in the same area potentially are more resilient to climate change, and it absolutely does reduce the risk of disease with less trees being imported from other countries or being moved around the country even as well. And that's why there's all of this sort of legislation and regulation around if you're selling trees, you know, the FRM and things that are mentioned in the chat, and we'll come back to that. Depending on where those trees are going to go, if you're going to donate them or just use them in local projects, or if you're going to try and sell them and run a business as such, then the paperwork is really important. So knowing your why is the best place to start, and it might be more people orientated, like Rod's project, which means it might not be as productive, but you know, the people are at the center of your ethos, and obviously the multiple benefits that it will provide. Or it might be more about making money in selling trees, either from a conservation point of view and flooding the market with as many local trees as possible to be used, or creating money as a social enterprise to reinvest in other projects. There's a great market for growing trees at the moment. As I'm probably sure you're all aware, we need to be planting quite a few as part of the 25-year plan. So there's lots of different opportunities. So it's just really to kind of elaborate on that and just say there's lots of different reasons for a community tree nursery. So who can be involved? I mean, as Stephen and Anisha have kind of shown, it's being part of Plymouth City Council, working with local authorities can actually be really productive. So even if you're just a community member and you want to start from scratch, just getting in contact with tree officers, councillors, the green estate and environmental planning teams in your local authority, and any sort of local tree charities or community groups, tree wardens via the Tree Council, and also businesses that, you know, might want to support this kind of work as part of their corporate social responsibility policies. They may have certain pots of funding that they can give out to local community groups to do something in line with environmental or social objectives, like social prescribing. And volunteering is increasing quite a lot. There's so many different ways to get involved in your local community now. I think people are quite open to the prospect of volunteering as a way to meet people and connect. So it shouldn't be too difficult to find a good volunteer base as well. And then you could run sessions with schools and youth groups, and have open community days if it's you know, busy times of the year in the autumn and the winter for tree planting or seed collections. You can open it up to as a one-day event and get lots of people involved, as well as it being a regular volunteer movement. And yeah, collaborating with NHS, social prescribing, healthcare providers. So it's really, as I was saying before, like knowing your why and what your market audience is and where those trees will be going, if you're going to be selling them or if you're going to be gifting them to projects. But really anyone can be involved, and the more you network, the easier it is to kind of build momentum in terms of funding and support. . So where would it be? These are a few examples of tree nurseries in the southwest. So this is More Trees that was visited last year. They've held a couple of events there for the CTNC, and I think they're doing another one in February on biosecurity. So that's one to look out for as an event, just to see how they set up. And Plymouth was sort of based on that in terms of these structures that are pest proof. But you can see it's very much off the ground. They do some bare root stuff there as well, but a lot of it is cages and a polytunnel. And if you're growing in cells, you can do it on concrete. So you don't need to have a piece of land, you know, somewhere in a rural area where you can grow into the ground. You can just do cell grown, and there's 7,000 trees in this quite small area. So you don't need a lot of space. So that's just to give you an example. You know, it could be that you work with the local authority and maybe set one up within some allotments, speak to private landowners or farmers that might want to contribute a bit of their land as a land share, or yeah, lots of different options. So don't be dismayed about, you don't need to own a piece of land. Local authorities are normally quite willing to work with a volunteer base that's dedicated to this in parks or an area that's unused. So you may have heard this before, but when is best to start? Well, the best time to plant trees was 20 years ago, but the second best time is now. And it's really about just getting started with learning who is involved in trees in your local area, or who is involved in mental health and social prescribing, if that's the avenue that you want to go down. Really networking and trying to see who's involved, where the pots of money are, where there might be funding bids to collaborate with different people on, establishing where you want to set up. And, you know, and like Rod was saying, so Plymouth City Council had 12k of funding, quite lucky, and so they managed to sort of front load all of the equipment that they needed straight away, which is a gift. But you know, Rod has been buying things secondhand, and also Plymouth City Council have had stuff given by local businesses as well. So you don't necessarily need a lot of money to get the materials that you need. You can collaborate with people in different ways. And then also collecting seeds. So before you can start growing trees, it's obviously an annual cycle. So it's timing with the autumn, collecting those seeds, processing them over winter, and then you can get started in the new year. And don't be afraid to start small. You know, you can build up from there once you've got a group of dedicated volunteers or people to run it and a space. Things can quite quickly build from there when you network and look for funding. And we do help with that as much as possible. If there's any funding available, we share that on our social media. And it's worth looking on our Facebook page at the moment. There is a funding pot out at the moment for £500, I think, for eligible CTNs that need to buy equipment up front. So £500 isn't very much, but it is a start. And there's other pots of money that do become available. So how does it work to run a tree nursery? So this kind of gives you a quick overview of a sort of annual calendar of jobs to do. So there are busy periods and less busy periods in a year. So autumn is all about seed collection and processing. And it's a great time to get community events organised and get lots of people in, and also promote your CTN as well. And it might be that you want to get different funders involved, or local businesses as well might want to fund some of those events in exchange for being able to advertise the fact that they're supporting you as part of their CSR. So you plant acorns straight away. And some seeds, as Stephen was explaining, need stratifying, either in the fridge or left out over winter in the stratification beds. And then winter is just about maintaining those seeds. And then in the spring, once they start to germinate, it's then sort of seed trays, pricking out, potting on, and then a lot of watering over the summer. So another thing to think about is obviously a water source wherever you're based. And then volunteer groups, there's different models of how you want to run a nursery. It might be, if you're lucky enough to get funding, that like Rod, you can employ people to make sure, if it's more of a business model, that you have that consistency, and then you can also have volunteers as well. Or it could just be completely volunteer led, depending on the size. And then time commitment will change throughout the year. But as Anisha was saying, you know, they're doing one event every week, and there's enough to sort of keep everyone busy, either with watering or planting, mostly through the year. And then deciding what trees to grow, understanding the need. Broadleaf obviously is the most important for the UK, but it might be that you're working with the local authority to do urban planting, in which case you might want drought resilient species, or maybe in parks something a bit different than just sort of native trees to create woodland. So just thinking about that as well in deciding what you're going to grow and what the market is. So just a quick overview in terms of what you need to be thinking about for equipment. So if you're doing cell grown, then you'll need the cells to plant into. If you're very small scale, that could be toilet rolls, or you could spend out on the black plastic ones that are reusable. Compost, sand, seed trays, thinking about pest control, depending on what your site is. Are there rabbits, voles, mice, that kind of thing? So you might need to protect them. Shade netting for the summer. If they get too hot, they'll dry out too quickly, and then you might lose them. A water source, whether you're harvesting rainwater like Plymouth is, or whether you have access to mains. Tables and trellises if you want them off the ground. And then obviously hoses, seeds, and volunteers to make it all happen. And don't forget tea and biscuits. That's the most important thing if you have volunteers. So just quickly rattle through the last two slides because I'm just conscious on time. So I will be sending around an email tomorrow to you all with a lot of links to different online resources. And I know, thank you to the people that have put some of those things in the chat already. I'll put it all in one document for you, and then that's your sort of bedtime reading for the next week if you're interested. But it just helps to have it all in one place. And the same with funding. If there's anything that we're aware of, we'll share it on social media. But also just think about collaborating with other people that might have pots of money to spend on similar projects. It's always worth asking. A lot of councils as well have pots of money that they'll use for community projects, and you might need to bid for it. But it's probably quite a simple process to do that, and you never know. I think in Plymouth there's you can get, they'll double basic, or if you can crowdfund, they'll double what you can make up to about 30k. So it's really worth checking in to see what's available. And then finances, yeah, so just thinking about starting small. If you can get some funding, that's great. If not, sort of building it up slowly. And whether I'm thinking about whether you're going to sell the trees and you want to run it more like a business, then you really want a business plan and sort of like a 5-year model. And then just thinking about volunteers, you know, you will need to think about health and safety and people management, especially if you're going to employ someone, supervision and policies, loan working and that kind of thing. And then if you're employing people, also obviously job descriptions, schedules of work and training, and you'll need at least one person to be consistently organising a troop of volunteers and setting what the what the tasks are every week, even if it's just writing it on a blackboard and leaving it out for people. It will need to be coordinated. And then regulations, as we've sort of touched on already, if you're going to be selling the trees, there will need to be paperwork and certain registrations to follow. And there'll be more information on that in the pack that follows as well. And this just also outlines just the array of different resources that are available to you. If this is a journey that you want to undertake, there's already so many videos and books and PDFs and ways that we can signpost you to help. So all of that will be on its way to you as well. So hopefully that inspires you to continue. So we will move on to the Q&A. I will stop sharing so that I can have a look at what questions we've got. So I know the first one, there was one for you, Rod, if you haven't answered it already. What's the number of polytunnels that you have up and running, and are they netted? Oh, you're on mute, Rod.
Okay, we've got one polytunnel at the moment. It's a 60 by 18 northern polytunnels that we were advised to go with because we're in a very, very exposed site. And we are frequently getting very high northerly winds coming through our site, which has surprised me. But I've got another 5 with an option on another 2 commercial polytunnels, which I've got secondhand. They cost me £500 a piece. Yeah, secondhand, and they are going to be put up with netting to look after our cell grown stock. So yeah, that's where we're at.
Thank you. Claire Lyons, you had a question about therapeutic horticulture groups, if there's any to link with. I don't know where you're based. Maybe if you're able to unmute and let us know. I know there is one in Plymouth, but it depends how close you are to the southwest.
That's the question very well. My phone's been acting up. I was just more wondering if any of the members or any of your groups are working with groups involved in therapeutic horticulture, if you found that there's been good ways to collaborate in that way. That would answer the question very well.
Yes.
Lovely. Thanks, Claire. I mean, if anyone has got any specific examples, it would be great to put that in the chat. But I think, yeah, I mean, I guess the sort of the social prescribing it's automatically working with trees is therapeutic horticulture if there's a wellbeing need to sign up to be a volunteer. But if there's any specific charities that anyone is aware of or is working with, please pop that in the chat for Claire as well. That'd be great. Thank you. So the next one. There's one for you, Rod, on I'm just checking you haven't.
No, I haven't answered that one.
So training for volunteers and ways to hopefully find employment if desired.
This is an interesting one. We have an arrangement with our local horticultural college, and they will deliver RHS1 practical for free. Actually, that has its limitations because when I started this up, I thought anybody with a bit of horticultural knowledge and a bit of science would be able to do it. And actually, I've realised that it's not. Actually, people with some fairly advanced horticultural training I've actually watched them lose themselves on trees, because they each species has different needs and different requirements. And yeah, I think that there is definitely need for specific training on dealing with trees. Just one example, we were digging up trees, and there was about a half an inch of frost on the ground, and one of our volunteers who'd done a horticultural course was saying that I'm getting quite irritated because we were damaging the trees, supposedly. Actually, we're not, because in that state they were dormant, and we weren't damaging them. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
Thank you. I'd quite like to open that question up to Stephen and Anisha as well. I don't know if you guys have got any anything you want to add there in terms of how you train volunteers. Do you have, have you developed specific like booklets and documents for them to follow, or how do you guys organize it?
So we do have, for seed collecting, we give them handouts to make sure that they're collecting the right seeds. Aside from that, training wise, we do organize group trips to other nurseries, so teaching them, showing them what another nursery might look like further down the line or on a larger scale. Yeah, I think those are the two key things. We also like to direct them towards other resources. And I think further down the line, yeah, and we've opened up the question to them of what kind of training they would like to receive. So we're currently trying to see what we can provide.
Is there, of the existing sort of literature, like the Good Seed Guide and those kind of books, is there one that you found particularly helpful to sort of guide volunteers to the information?
Yeah, the Tree Growers Guide is it's like our Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah, do everything by that. It's brilliant. Highly recommend that.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on. So yeah, you guys are doing rainwater harvesting. So there's a few questions around the troughs that you guys are using in Plymouth, and how you use those and where you get them from. You able to talk us through that?
Yeah, so they're literal beef troughs that you would get from any horticultural supplier. I think ours are 6 foot by 2 foot. There's a drainage layer on the bottom. So they're feed cattle troughs. So they've got a drainage hole at one end, which is really important. And then there's a few inches of hardcore rubble at the bottom to act as an additional drainage layer. So any water, the roots and seeds aren't sitting in sodden soil. Filled with compost and then labelled. But yeah, any horticultural supplier, they're just cattle troughs. And a cheaper version, bathtubs work the same, buckets, plastic tubs, any container that you can keep them safe and can leave out all winter.
Okay, and that's for the wind-blown seeds, is it? And you just scatter them over the top and cover them and leave them, or do you?
Yeah, so typically wind-blown seeds are normally the pioneer species that don't mind growing in a higher density, a little bit closer together, and they're not as vulnerable to voles and mice and things, and things that are going to want to eat hazelnuts and oak seeds, etc. So yeah, anything like that, scatter with a very thin layer of soil over the top, and then a watering just to embed those seeds down. And then the following spring, once they've all germinated, because a lot of those windblown stuff are germinating in year one, so you don't have to wait 2 years for 50% of the seeds to sprout, and then another 50%, and then you'd be plucking them out of there and putting them into cells or putting them into the ground.
Great, thanks, Stephen. And then so the next question, I think, would be good for both sets of speakers to answer. So Lorraine has said you're both quite large scale, almost commercial size, compared to what Lorraine is doing, and she's got a pot of £1,500 of funding. If you only had £1,500, knowing what you know, how would you spend that first? What would you spend it on? What's the most important thing? Rod, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think it comes back to why you're doing it. If you have £1,500, that means that if you get a grant that is 50% funding, if you can get a 50% grant, then you've doubled your price straight away. Also, there are actually grants available. The grant that we got, which started us up, was £10,000, no hold barred. We could spend it on whatever we wanted. I think you could go a long way with £1,500 in all sorts of different ways. But I would suggest to you that there is funding available for you if you really do look around. You do need to be looking very carefully. It's a big part of my job, looking at what funding is around. But the other thing is that I don't want to be being funded forever. So I want to find a happy medium where I can get to a point where I'm effectively break even and I'm self-supporting. Because I think one of the fundamental problems is when people are looking continually for funding, their business actually isn't viable. So yeah, I think that whatever size you're pitching at, that there is a way of doing it, and also with the cattle, with the troughs that we were talking about, I use the baths and they're fine. Yes, you just put a bit of netting on the top and they do. So it's about make, do, amend. It's about who you talk to as well.
Brilliant, thank you. Stephen and Anisha, did you have anything you wanted to add to that question?
No, I think you covered everything that I might have said about that. I don't know about you, Stephen.
No, mine was going to be much more basic. Space to grow, whether that's cell grown or you're leasing an allotment or whatever that might be. You need somewhere to grow them and there's something to water them. So, and somewhere to store your tools. So shed, water, and space. I think those are your three essentials to start.
Thank you. There's a question from Mary Shouldham around how does I think that means Community Tree Nursery, how do you support yourselves as full-time employees? I suppose Stephen and Anisha, you have different, it's not just Community Tree Nursery, that's like one project as part of many for you. Do you know how much it's costing you to run in terms of people time, and is that, I know you want to sort of break even, the same as Rod has just said, but do you have a plan for how long that's going to take you, or is that just something that you're working towards in the future?
Well, number one, I'm a volunteer as well, so actually there's no paid employee at the moment. None. Okay. I think in terms of contractors' fees and so on, I think this year we've paid out just over £8,000, I think, and yeah, that's digging a hole that hopefully we'll be able to repay but once we start selling the trees next year.
Thank you. Stephen and Anisha, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so for us staff-wise, I dedicate about 3 days a week, and we have Callum, who couldn't join us, who dedicates 1 day a week. It's a bit of a weird situation with me because technically I'm on a placement which is externally funded, so I'm not actually costing the tree nursery anything. And I believe the business plan that we had commissioned says that in about 5 years we should break even from setup. I can't think of the numbers off the top of my head, unfortunately, but yeah, I think yeah.
Yeah, and I think it is important to acknowledge that with a tree nursery that there is going to be a lag time. It takes 1 to 2 years really to turn around trees that are saleable. So yeah, having an injection of capital in the beginning is always handy, or at least people that are willing to volunteer their time until it can grow and you get that first year of sales. From memory, being involved with Plymouth, I think the model was around growing 20,000 trees in order to be able to sell 7,000 a year. So yeah, and that would be within 2 years you would start to see some money coming back in. And also for everyone else listening, that's also on a model of selling the trees potentially to the Woodland Trust. So they have lots of regional suppliers for their trees for their bigger projects. So it is possible to become a regional supplier for the Woodland Trust, but they have a certain level of criteria that you would need to adhere to in order to be part of that model. So there's the FRM part that we've talked about, but also the UK SIG kind of level as well, to make sure that you can work with them. But that is another avenue as well, if you're thinking of selling trees, is to contact them and see how you can develop to become a regional supplier. Okay, thank you. There was one for you, Anisha, on how does your biosecurity work so far?
We haven't had any major, well, we haven't actually had any trees sprout yet because we only collected seeds last season. So we did have a few issues with some of the dog rows from previous years, but it wasn't really, it was more to do with the density that they were growing at. They just needed more aeration. So yeah, so far, no problems, but yeah, maybe more to come.
So you're registered and you're doing the paperwork for the FRM stuff, but not, yeah, so that's all in line, but you're not selling any trees at the moment, is that right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So just scrolling down, just to highlight, Carol Douglas, thank you, Carol, has just shared around Seed to Sapling project. Has developed some simple information sheets and links, and she's put that in the chat as well. So check that one out. So there's a question from Claire around EU plant passports and whether Brexit has impacted. I mean, I guess you guys are processing trees to be processed in the UK. So other than FRM, are you having to do any other regulation work that's different?
Yes.
You are, Rod?
Yeah, we're registered with DEFRA for plant health.
Yeah.
And we're registered with Plant Healthy, which is totally different. We need a plant passport that we get from DEFRA and Plant Health. There is quite an issue, or there's quite a lot of time to be spent on the bureaucracy of this and jumping through the various hoops. And people need to make a decision whether they want to do that. Obviously we did, but I know of other tree nurseries who are saying we don't want to go down that line, we don't want to waste our time doing that, and therefore they limit their activities accordingly, and they give trees away, and they do it for the enjoyment of the thing itself, and I understand that, yeah. And yeah, again, it's a question of why you're doing it.
Yes, yeah, thank you. And I know we've discussed this before in previous sessions about whether, because there's such a growing network of CTNs now, whether there might be some specific regulations for CTNs that obviously comply with biosecurity, but make it a bit easier for them to comply if they're very small scale, without so much, of the paperwork. So yeah, watch this space on that if that becomes available. So Alexandra had a question. How do you find the market? So the people who want your trees, how do you decide whether or how to price your trees and give them away when it might undercut nurseries who need income to thrive?
Can I answer that one for you? Because
yeah, definitely. Thank you.
The trick for me is market research. When you are looking for potential customers, you contact them and say that you're setting up and you're doing market research, and you're trying to find out whether they would have a need for any trees, whether they would buy any trees off you, and whether you would actually get a sale. And that's what we did, and that's what gave us the confidence to move forward, because we actually have our first sales already ready to go, if you see what I mean. I think that there's nothing better than actually doing your market research. That's desk market research, where you're looking at what the competition are charging. I have been told recently that Community Tree Nursery trees will be selling at a premium because people want to buy into the whole notion of what you're actually about. And we will be looking to sell our trees at a premium, not undercut the market, if that helps.
Thank you. Have you had any thoughts on that in terms of how you would, if you were going to sell them, like how you would go to market and what that market looks like?
Yeah, how to go to market, no experience of, but I can speak as a buyer. So exactly what Rod just said, Community Tree Nurseries and their ethos and the quality of the stock even supersedes the price a lot of the time. The price margins are so minor, and even at scale it can be quite considerable. But I find that when we're buying them and when landowners that we're facilitating woodland creation with, the quality of the stock is always preferred over the difference in a few pence on the tree. So I would do exactly that: grow good trees with a good ethos and sell them for a premium.
Yeah, I agree. Sounds good. So there's a question on watering. How do you manage your watering? So Stephen, you were saying you've got that rainwater harvesting, and that's just with a watering can, or do you have a drip feed set up as well?
So far just a watering can. So we've got a continuous supply of water through the spring, and water butts at various places around the site. It was a consideration when we built our frames that are going around on the tables around the cell grown beds, that we can install sprinkler systems further down the line. I think drip, I've never seen drip irrigation being used on cell grown stock before. I guess if you were growing larger pot grown stuff, then you could. I think that's how large nurseries do it. But yeah, from what I've seen, it's those two options. If they're in the ground, they might need a little bit less water because they've always got that availability. Whereas if they're in cell grown, they're drying out a lot faster. So yeah, a lot of watering cans and a lot of man hours. And I guess if and as when you upscale, then a pressurized pump with sprinkler systems going up underneath your cage.
Thank you. Yeah, and I guess that system works for you because you're quite rich on volunteers and kind of people resource. So actually it's quite nice for everyone to really get involved with the watering as a job, I guess.
Yeah.
Whereas if there was only, you know, sort of 3 people running it, then it starts to become a bit of a burden after a while.
Yeah, and I guess I just had a thought as well, depending on what stock you're growing, if it's something that doesn't mind growing with wet feet, so willow and alder, etc., you can grow them in permanent bodies of water, or if they're in tables, you can grow them in trays with capillary matting, for example, and just top the whole tray up at once and then allow that to dry. You have to watch that the roots aren't going into the capillary matting, and then defeats the purpose of them being cell grown. But yeah, potential option.
Yeah, thank you. Rod, how do you water all of your trees? So many.
Yeah. Well, when I started out, I started by looking at that, by intending to grow all field grown, for the savings that were involved, of water particularly. And we actually had 10 weeks where we didn't have any rain, and the trees survived. It was getting to, without water. We didn't put any water on other than the rain, the little bits of rain that fell during that time. Some it actually went for a month without rain, and there was sufficient moisture in the soil to keep them going. We are at the moment, when we put the commercial polytunnels up, we will be putting capillary matting under there for any pot grown that we're doing, but we will need to do some overhead irrigation for the cell grown. At the moment, though, it's a hose with a lance.
Thank you. I'm just looking if there's a quick, just conscious we've only got a minute left, if there's a quick one. I think a lot of them have been answered by other members as well, which is fantastic. So thank you. You've all been having a great discussion and answering each other's questions, which is fantastic. I think we'll leave it there just to keep to time. And just wanted to say, yeah, a big thank you for coming along today, and to our amazing speakers for answering all of your questions as well. Yeah, thank you ever so much, guys, and just, yeah, well done on the amazing projects that you're doing as well. And yeah, we'll hope to hear more about yeah, how you succeed over the coming years. And yeah, thank you all for coming. I will be sending out an email tomorrow. If there's any questions that we haven't answered, I will also put that in the handout, so that everyone gets their questions answered. But thank you very much, everyone, for being here. And yeah, hope to see you on further webinars, or on our Facebook page, sort of collaborative page, and check out all of the links that I've sent as well around YouTube, and our Eventbrite page. We will be having a whole year up until March 2025. There'll be multiple webinars coming out on a monthly basis, doing more deep dives into funding or managing volunteers or biosecurity. There'll also be visits to different nurseries as well, to see how they're set up on the ground, and how they manage biosecurity as well. So keep an eye, follow our Eventbrite page. And yeah, we hope you found this useful, and enjoy the rest of your evenings. Thank you very much.